Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to call this meeting to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Ojibwe, Cree, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. My name is Carrie Linklater, and I am your chairperson this afternoon. And I am joined on the panel via Zoom by Ms. Tracy Anderson. And to my left, panel member Mr. Doug Marks. Our city secretary this afternoon is Mrs. Crystal Harland, and our city assessor is Mr. Darren Ducharme. To the Zoom participants of this hearing, please note you are placed in the waiting room until your property is called upon. When it is your turn, you will be admitted into the meeting. Kindly follow along on the City of Winnipeg's Board of Revision YouTube channel for the hearing process. Once the host admits you into the hearing, please close or mute your YouTube player. You will be then permitted to speak with respect to your property. Once your hearing has concluded, you can leave the meeting. This afternoon, we will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. Statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by City Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. And as information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. This afternoon, we will be hearing items 2 and 7 on the docket. And Mrs. Harland, if you would please affirm the assessors and the applicant's testimony.
Yes, Madam Chair. Mr. Assessor, would you please state your full name? Would you please stand up?
Darren Ducharme.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please be seated. Mr. Applicant, would you please state your full name? Mr. Carson, please.
Carson Horsburgh.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Chair, should I swear Mr. Charlotte LaPage in now, or?
We'll do it when we come to this. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Horsburgh and Mr. Ducharme. Mr. Ducharme, if you would like to lead us off.
Certainly.
Oh, I'm sorry. Getting ahead of myself. We're looking at 234 Portage Avenue. And we are looking at the assessed value today at $847,000. So if you'd like to begin, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have file number 24-1038. The roll number is 120-931-17000. The address is 234 Portage Avenue. For the roll year 2025, with a reference date of April 1st, 2023. We have an assessed value of 138,000 for T10 and 709,060 T for a total of 847,000. The parcel use is a CMCMU, it's a commercial multiple use. There's one building, we have 5 premises, it's a 2-story building. The actual year built is 1909, we have an effective year built of 1970. Going over to the other side of the column, the leasable area we have is 7,040 square feet. Our recommendation is to confirm the assessed value. On page 2 of the brief, our subject property photos at the top of page 2. We have a parcel view of the subject property at 234 Portage. It's on the south side, just west of 4th Street and a block from Portage and Main. At the bottom of page 2, we have a Google Street View of the subject property built in 1909 as a bank, and I believe has been used as a bank up until 2003 when the then tenant vacated the space, and has been subsequently purchased by the current owner, who, as you will see, has made substantial improvements to the interior. The last tenant to occupy the premise was a laser eye surgery business who vacated in March of 2022, relocating elsewhere. My understanding of the building, it does have historical designation for the exterior, but not for the interior. On page 3, we have the rent comparables. All the comparables provided are located in the same region 4, city center, as a subject. In fact, with the exception of comparable number 7, 350 Hargrave, and number 9 at 285 Portage, the remainder of the comparables are in the same neighborhood as the subject property, which is South Portage. All comparables are commercial standalone buildings, either retail or office. Comparable number 9, that's in a different neighborhood, is directly adjacent, or sorry, I would like to point out that comparable 9 at 230 Portage is directly adjacent to the subject property. Comparables number 10 through 14 are all second floor rents. These comparables are all one roll number, the same building, which is located directly across Portage from the subject. The mean of these main floor comparables is $17.13. The median is $17.50, which we feel is in support of the main floor rent at $15.76 per square foot. The mean of these second floor rents for the comparables is $14.62. And the median is $15 per square foot, which we feel is in support of the model at $14.43 per square foot, notwithstanding the quality of the subject premise, which we'll see shortly. Page 4 are the multi-family rent comparables. I won't spend a lot of time on this. I don't believe the the applicant is in dispute of this. All comparables are in the same region as the subject property, in close proximity to the subject property. The mean of these comparables is $1,072.57 per square foot, with a median of $1,075 per unit per month. So we feel those are in support of the model, which is at $1,181.25 per month, particularly when we consider the actual rents reported in the mailer is $2,000 per month. On page 5, we have the subject property, the retail income stream. We have 4 premises with a total area of 7,040 square feet, giving a potential rent of $74,224. We've applied a vacancy of 17%, expenses at 3%, shortfall $7 per square foot, and we've applied a cap rate of 7.25%, giving a rounded value for the retail stream of $709,000. On page 6, we have the income stream, the apartment stream summary or workup. We have a 1-bedroom suite with a monthly rent per suite, $1,181.25, giving a potential gross income of $14,175. We have a vacancy loss of 4.3%, expenses at 52.53%, and an overall cap rate of 4.65%, giving an estimated value of $138,000 rounded. On page 7 is a summary of both income streams that was just discussed. At the bottom, we see the total $847,000, comprised of $709,000 for the retail stream and $138,000 for the apartment stream. On page 8 is our capitalization rate charts. The model has applied a cap rate of 7.25% for the retail stream, which is above the 80th percentile for the City of Winnipeg report, as well as for 2 of the third-party market reports. And it's at the upper end of the Cushman Wakefield report. Therefore, we feel that the cap rate applied to the retail stream is fair. In regards to the apartment stream cap rate of 4.65%, that has been applied by the model. We do acknowledge that this is below the 20th percentile for all the multifamily market reports. However, we've chosen not to adjust it in consideration the actual rents being achieved that the model did not capture because I would say of the unique characteristics of the apartments. To be clear, we're not seeking an increase. We simply feel that the model value is reasonable, but not necessarily as to how it was reached, and we're looking to adjust those characteristics to consider the uniqueness of the property. And to give an example, the applicant, I believe, is requesting a 5.5% cap for the apartment stream. If we were to use that cap rate and apply it to the actual rents reported at $24,000 per year, the net operating income of the apartment stream would be $10,903. Applying the 5.5% cap rate would give a value of $198,000 rounded, which is greater than the $138,000 that's being applied by the model. And I'd be happy to give the details of that workup if asked. On page 9 is the Municipal Assessment Act excerpts. On page 10 is page 1 of the income and expense report that was returned by the owner. We see near the top, the partially owner operated has been checked off. The owner operates a business out of the second floor. On page 2 of the income and expense report, signed off by the owner. Page 12 is page 1 of the tenant verification form. Again, we see it's indicated as owner occupied. Page 13 of my brief is the page 2 of the tenant verification form. Page 14 is the multifamily questionnaire that was returned. I'd like to point out that in the property features or amenities, there is an elevator. There is an indoor parking space. Also, when we look at the rental income, there is 1 bedroom at $2,000 per month, giving an annual income of $24,000 per year. On page 15, this was a change of address that was returned with the mailer and it was included. So it's been included here. It's something our data services would have reviewed for updating. We have not had any issues with the mailers being returned or any taxes being paid. Page 16, we have a subject property, March 2022 MLS listing. It's the cover letter, if you will. If we go down to the remarks, we see showings indicate it could be a medical, office, or retail. And this was the cover letter, and there's a couple pictures on the next page, page 17. Interior photos from that listing. The top photo is the main floor premise. The bottom photo is the second floor premise mezzanine area, where we can see or get a sense of the interior quality of the subject premise. Page 18 is the subject property September 2021 MLS listing, which included more photos. This is the cover page, if you will. If we go down to the remarks, we see the exterior of the White House has a historic designation, but not the interior. If you look to the public comments here, the White House is a rare find. Its exterior is historic with a terracotta tile facade, huge Grecian columns. The main floor is occupied by an eye laser clinic till February 28, 2022. The second floor has 3 spacious and tasteful offices of the owners with a reception area, washroom, kitchen behind the offices is where things get interesting. The owners have created a most elegant and unusual residence. It's designed in a neoclassical style with Greek accents, cherry wood, floors and door frames. Dividing the living and dining areas, a natural wood burning marble fireplace for distinctive Greek statues that mimic these structures at the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg. At the center of the curved ceiling above is a luminous stained glass window that is true work of art. It was featured in the movie Siberia starring Keanu Reeves, and then etc. On page 19, at the top photos just inside the entrance with a stairwell leading up to the second floor. And the bottom is a photo that's the owner occupied part of the premise. Page 20, we have interior photos of the apartment suite. Page 21, some more interior photos of the apartment suite. Page 23, again, more interior photos showing the curved stained glass on the ceiling as well as the kitchen. Page 23, photos of a bathroom and a garage at the bottom. Page 24 are the photos of the roof showing a very nice extended living area, if you will, with a pond, fireplace, hot tub, etc. Pages 25 on would be the comparable photos we have on page 25. Kennedy Street and Portage Avenue on the bottom. Page 26 is 254 Edmonton and 224 Main. Page 27 is 164 Fort and 350 Hargrave. And on page 28, 230 Portage and 285 Portage Avenue. That would conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ditcher. Excuse me, Mr. Horsberg, did you have any questions for the assessor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions for the assessor. So, Mr. Ducharme, I believe you mentioned in your presentation that the cap rate applied to the residential component of the building falls outside of the typical range. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So is there any evidence in the disclosure that supports the cap rate at 4.65%?
No, but as I believe I mentioned, we agree that I guess the way the model came to that value, we don't necessarily agree with, but we feel that the value in total is fair and that we will be working on our adjustments to more reflect the property.
Okay. But I guess just to clarify, there's no evidence in the disclosure that would support the cap rate at 4.65%.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, thank you. Now just moving on to page 3, you mentioned comparable number 9. Was it comparable number 9 or comparable number 8? I think 230 Portage, right next door to the subject. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, and what was the start date on that lease?
2003.
2003, so about 20 years ago.
Yes, it did have a renewal of September 2020.
Okay, were you aware that the property 230 Portage was vacant at as of the reference period?
That. Seems like it sounds likely. I know there is a new tenant in there. I'm not sure when the previous one did vacate, but that could be very well, yes.
Okay, thank you. And then just regarding, looks like comparables. Starting at comparable 235 Portage, then comparables 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. Those are all the same building, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Can you speak to the variation with these rents, if all for I guess comparables 2 and then 10 through 14? Can you speak to the variation of those rental rates?
I didn't consider it, to be honest. The lease start dates seem to be fairly similar, so I wouldn't be able to explain the variance from the two that are 12 to the others that seem to be similar.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. And Ms. Anderson, any questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no questions at this time.
Yes, the upgrades that were done to the structure in the living area, when were they done? What was the value of those upgrades?
They were done in 2008, the upgrades. The declared construction value for those upgrades was $450,000.
And those upgrades included electrical, plumbing, all structural?
Like HVAC, electrical. Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't seem to have specifics in regards to. But I know it's like electrical, flooring, HVAC, and that would be the extent.
And that included the roof area as well?
No, I believe the roof area, the stained glass, I believe it was always there. Initially, as part of a bank. Like the stained, you're talking about the stained glass.
And as well as the laptop and all.
Oh, I imagine that would have been, I would imagine the residential portion would have been after. Would have been included as part of this renovation,
Okay,
being a residential.
and this is a model driven.
We did increase the vacancy. Going back to the retail. Retail portion. We have it at 17%. Can't recall, the vacancy would normally be 4 or 5%. So it's taking into account the previous tenant vacating in 2022.
Okay, and is it occupied right now?
It is not.
No further questions. Thank you very much.
Mr. Ducharme, did you inspect this property?
I did not personally inspect the property.
Do you know when it was last inspected?
The only notes we have, like, not related to the realty, but to the vacate of the previous tenant in 2022, so we can actually go into inspect. We just know that they had vacated and confirmed it. That's by one of our staff.
And that was the eye laser surgery business
Yes.
that vacated. And do you know whether it's currently rented?
The premise is currently not rented.
Okay, is this owner occupied?
The owner has a business on the second floor that they occupy. It's 1,000 square feet, but that would be the only portion.
Do you know if it's the owner living there occupying the space?
I don't know.
Living space, all right.
They didn't indicate in the mailer if they are or not, so having said that, I would not. I mean, the 2,000 that's there, would be reasonable, in my view, considering quality of the premise.
So you talked, or you have, information in your brief that this was listed in 2021, correct? Correct?
Yes, they never sold it.
All right, is it currently listed?
No, not to my knowledge, in my review, when reviewing this property, it didn't seem to be currently listed, no.
And just had two more questions, just in regards to, the build, just the pictures that were provided. So is the bedroom on the mezzanine?
To my knowledge, no, I mean, it looks like it, and there is some beds here set up, but. I'm not sure, to be honest. The
All right.
pictures do seem to indicate that, but
That's why I'm wondering if that's the.
I hadn't thought of that yet,
Okay,
which would be unusual, but.
so, okay, so we don't know if on page 21, that is. The rental, like the apartment, I'm gonna call it apartment, we don't know if that's what that is, correct?
Well, it's near, yeah, I guess that's fair.
Cause it's on the mezzanine, all right, and also on page 22, the kitchen. Do you know if that's on the mezzanine or on the main floor?
No, this is on the second floor, so I believe all this, the residence is all on like the second floor behind the mezzanine, behind the owner occupied.
Thank you. My last question, you said that this building has a historical designation, the front facade, I'm assuming, you said?
Yes, my understanding, yes.
Okay, do any of your comparables have a historical designation?
Good question. I never looked into that, to be honest. When you look across the street, page 25, 221 to 235 Portage Avenue was built in a similar time frame. Whether they have that designation or not, I do not know. 224 Main also built about the same time. Whether they have that designation, I do not know.
So we'll say we don't know. Because,
Yes, that's right, absolutely.
Would you say having a historical designation on a building makes it more difficult in terms of what you can do with that?
So this, just to be clear, like the historical designation is for the exterior of the property. And I agree, yes, you're certainly limited to what you can do with it. However, looking at this property, I don't know, it's very attractive as is. When you look at the exterior, it wouldn't seem it's aged well. It almost looks, other than the architecture of itself, the building itself's in very good shape on the exterior. Like I haven't been inside, I've been outside there many times, and it's aged very well, I would say. Doesn't look like it's really aged. It almost looks new with old architecture.
But then you gave it 17% vacancy.
Yeah, to account, it has been vacant since 2022.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Mr. Horsberg, if you'd like to present your brief, please.
Thank you, excuse me. Thank you, Madam Chair. I should also make the panel aware that I've also submitted rebuttal evidence as well.
Right.
Just wanted to see if everyone's received that.
I'll make sure that everyone has it.
I'm sure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll begin then if that's all right.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so as we're all aware, we're discussing 234 Portage, the White House, as it's known colloquially. The board will follow me to page 3 of the disclosure. MNP has valued the subject property and we've determined a market value that is just slightly lower than the assessment. We are requesting that the property be revised to $778,000. The board will continue and follow me through to page 5. The main point of contention is the assessed rental rate on the commercial portion of the property, as well as the residential cap rate at 4.65%. So if we go on now to page 6, we have the assessment and taxation valuation breakdown. Page 7 and 8, we have assessment map, aerial photograph, exterior photograph. We've already seen some of the interior photographs. And moving on to page 10, we have the breakdown of the property. So the total leasable area of 7,040 square feet can be broken down to basement, main floor retail, mezzanine, and the second floor office space. That second floor office space is the owner occupied portion, and then the retail and mezzanine space is leasable, as well as the basement storage area. So the property has been assessed with a blended rental rate of $10.54 per square foot. MNP has looked at comparable leases in the area, and we've determined a market rate that is slightly lower at $8.75, again blended. So looking at some downtown retail properties that have leased in recent years, different sizes, all in the downtown area, ranging anywhere from $7 to $13 a square foot. Downtown office space, again, varying sizes, anywhere from $11 to $13 a square foot. Mezzanine space, you have a hard time finding lease comparables of any sort of mezzanine space that's been leased. So we've applied a storage rate of $5 a square foot for the mezzanine space. And that's on page 11, we have the final breakdown of how MNP has determined the blended rate of $8.75 a square foot. And then on page 12, I did look at the market to see, unique as the property is, what do sort of older early 1900s buildings sell for in Winnipeg? In the downtown, the historically protected properties. I was able to find 3 properties similar to the subject that have sold in recent years. And those properties sold between $60 a square foot to about $83 a square foot, whereas the subject property has been valued at $120 per square foot. Acknowledging that the property has been improved with sort of some unique features, obviously in the residential part of the building. MNP feels that a rate of about $110 a square foot is reasonable for the subject property, especially looking at similar 110 plus year old buildings. They're selling between $60 and $80 a square foot. 110 per square foot is pretty reasonable, considering that the property is unique and has received some upgrades over the years. So pages 15 through, I believe, 23, some of the leasing comparables and sales comparables. If anyone is curious what some of these older properties are like downtown, I've included photographs. But yeah, with that being said, I would welcome any questions, and that would conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bouchard, do you have questions?
Yes, I do. Thank you. On page 10, I'll be brief, Mr. Oswald. In regards to the downtown retail space comparables, specifically 289 King Street, That property is located between Logan, just to the south, and Higgins, just north, very close to the Main Street underpass. By the, I believe it's a CPR train and the rail yard nearby. Certainly, the subject property has challenges. Would you agree that this would be an inferior location in comparison to the subject property for a commercial property?
Yeah, I would agree that it's slightly inferior. I wouldn't say the subject's in a wildly superior area. We're kind of talking Exchange District, closer to more of the Chinatown area, versus closer to Portage and Maine. Overall, I would agree with you. Yes, that 289 King, inferior location.
Okay, thank you. I wouldn't expect Mr. Horsborough to know this. Our department has this property classified as an industrial warehouse. Would you agree, Mr. Horsborough, that industrial properties generally command a lower rent than commercial?
Yes.
And that would be all my questions.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, did you have any questions?
Just one, please. Hope you can hear me all right. Can you speak to the rental rate for the mezzanine? I thought that was fairly low considering the condition of it. Could you speak to that a little bit, please?
Yes. So mezzanine space, it's difficult to lease because you're purchasing or you're renting space that's wide open, that's not contained. So there's a very limited market for the type of organization that would want to rent that sort of space. So we've applied a storage rate. So normally, if you're just renting storage space in a warehouse, $4 to $5 a square foot is pretty typical. There's such a severely limited market for that type of space. That's why we've applied a storage rate to it. And I believe the assessor and myself both mentioned that property or that portion of the building is vacant, and has been for a number of years. Hence the higher than market vacancy rate that's been applied to the property.
Thank you very much. That's it, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Marcus.
Yes, on your comparables on page, well, there's 3 properties listed there and they were selling up at about the same time that the designated property was listed. These are all roughly the same vintage, sort of the same, some are the same size, some a little bit smaller, but our property listed at that point in 2021 for $3.5 million. These other ones were considerably lower. What would be the reasoning there?
Well, my understanding is that the Gary, Princess, and Ford Street properties, for the most part, they weren't renovated to the same degree as the subject property. So they would have been updated in the sense that when the steam plant was closed downtown Winnipeg, they would have been upgraded in that sense, and they would have been upgraded. The windows would have been upgraded, but these properties wouldn't have been renovated to the same degree as the subject property. So I would tend to think if the owner had really been motivated to sell that property, he probably would have lowered that asking price down from $3 million to something that is slightly higher than what these similar properties are selling for. So at $110 a square foot, it would make sense. These properties are quite similar, but about a 40% higher return, yeah, that would probably make sense for the property, given the size and what comparables that are similar vintage but not renovated to quite the same degree have sold for.
Is this property still vacant?
The subject property, they, as far as I'm aware, they only have the owner occupied space being leased out. So the remainder of the property is vacant.
So the apartment area is leased out then?
And so that I'm not 100% sure, because in previous income and expense disclosures, the owner had always listed the apartment building as his primary residence. And so there was no rent being achieved there. This is the first year where that's been listed as a rented space. My understanding was that the owner was still occupying the building and living in the apartment, but that could have changed at some point.
Thank you. No further questions.
So, Mr. Horsberg, did you inspect this property?
So I've been to the property actually 2 or 3 times, but I've never inspected it in the capacity that I'm currently in, not as the owner's agent, but I have been in that property at least 2 or 3 times in a different capacity.
All right. And would you say it's an A building, a B building, a C building?
I would say I wouldn't really classify it as any of the 3 just because it's so unique. There's very limited demand for that kind of a space where you have such a large apartment, you have mezzanine space. I have a hard time saying it. Like the finishes obviously are high end. The finishes are nice. But the property itself, its location, you've got 1 interior parking spot. You know, where does this property fit in the market? I can't classify it as A, B, or C because it's so unique, and the financial performance of the building shows that there's very limited demand for it. So I would have a very hard time classifying it as A, B, or C.
Yeah, that's fine. And that was my next question. I was gonna ask if you felt this building was unique.
Yeah, definitely one of a kind.
And sorry, and there's the one indoor parking, correct?
And 1 indoor parking spot. Yeah.
So there's no other parking associated with the building to the best of your knowledge?
No other parking to the best of my knowledge.
All right, and I just wanted a clarification. I meant to ask Mr. Ducharme on this. Is the, sorry, I just have to get to it, page. It's page 9, I believe. So is that a view from the mezzanine?
And sorry, this is a question for myself or Mr. Ducharme?
No, I'm sorry, for yourself.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so my understanding is that this is the main floor, and that's the mezzanine above the banisters.
Oh, okay. So I'm asking this more out of curiosity. There appears to be a door on one side leading off the mezzanine. So is there more office space up there?
So that would lead you, I believe, to the 1,000 square foot office unit.
Okay, thank you. And do you know what takes place in the basement?
My understanding is it's just used as storage for the owner, and it's unfinished storage space.
Okay. And your comparable sales that you used on. Gosh, sorry, I didn't write that down.
Oh, that's okay. It's page 12.
Page 12, yes. Do any of those have a historical designation attached to them, to the best of your knowledge?
I don't know off the top of my head. I know 308 Fort Street would, because it's a historic hotel, I believe, that's since been converted or was converted at some point. I would guess that all 3 would, but I don't know for a fact.
But you don't know, okay. Thank you. That's all my questions. And you had stated you had rebuttal.
I've also included rebuttal, yes.
All right. We are just going to take a very short recess. I believe that we have to print the rebuttal.
Okay.
Now I'd like to call this hearing back to order. And I'm sorry, Mr. Ducharme, I didn't ask you, did you need a moment for rebuttal, or are you all right?
Just kind of going. Do this first I've seen. Yeah, we can continue.
All right, Mr. Horsberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll try to keep the rebuttal quick and to the point. If the board will follow me, just starting on page 3 of the rebuttal. The reason I submitted this rebuttal is because the subject property has been assessed with a rental rate that it's not capable of achieving. And the evidence that the Assessment and Taxation Department has cited, really these comparable rents are either very superior or not at all similar to the subject property. So I've just included a little bit of information on each of the assessor's rent comparables. So starting on page 4, we have rent comparable number 1, 258 Kennedy Street, which is a restaurant property. Restaurants tend to achieve higher rental rates than your average retail property. So I don't feel that this property is representative of market rents for the subject. Moving on to page 5, we have 235 Portage Avenue. This property has some main floor office space and second floor office space, as well as some retail space and restaurant space. The assessor hasn't specified which area this property, where the rent is coming from. You'll see the same for all of the other rental rates that are coming from 235 Portage. We'll get to that later on, and I won't read through each and every one. But if we go on now to page 6, comparable number 3, 254 Edmonton Street. This property shows a tenant occupying 2,530 square feet. In reviewing the City of Winnipeg Assessment and Taxation website, the property does not have a tenant that occupies that amount of square footage. I would guess that for 254 Edmonton, the tenant, that rent that's included would have been for one of the businesses that have closed down in that property. There were a number of retail or restaurant tenants that have gone under in recent years. Now moving on to page 8 of the rebuttal evidence, 224 Main Street. This is the Fortune block. It was completely torn down to the studs in 2016 and underwent a complete renovation over 4 years. If you zoom in on page 8, the text should become less blurry, but 2 buildings were combined into one. Everything was new, down to new insulation, new walls, absolutely everything was new. This property has an effective age now of 2010 versus the subject property having an effective age of 1970. This property is not representative of what the subject property could achieve in terms of a market rent. So pages 9 through, I believe, through 14, 15, all the way through 20. So pages 9 through 20, you can read through this if you'd like, but it's just a news article speaking to 234 Main and all the work that was done to renovate it and restore it. It was all over the news. And then moving on to page 21, comparable number 5, 250 Kennedy Street. This property was renovated for the tenant. I've included the permit information. It's Tom Bargain Coffee. You can see when the permit was pulled, 2016. So this property was fit up for the tenant. So I wouldn't consider it to be a market rent when the tenant is going to be recouping some of the costs for fitting up the property. A similar case on page 22, comparable number 6, 140 or 164 Fort Street. Again, we have the tenant moving in with alterations and the permit. So again, I wouldn't consider it to be a market rent as there was a tenant, some tenant improvements there as well. Moving on to page 23, comparable number 7, 350 Hargrave Street, another restaurant. This one's in a different part of downtown, but again, not at all similar to the subject property. It's a restaurant. Comparable number 8 on page 24. This was 230 Portage next door with a 20-year-old lease. The property was vacated at some point within the past number of years. And then if we move on now to page 25, comparable 9, we're almost there. 285 Portage, another restaurant, not comparable or representative of market rents for the subject. And now pages 26 through 30 are all for 221 Portage. Again, whether these rent rates are coming from the office portion, second floor portion, main floor retail, main floor restaurant, the assessor hasn't specified. So again, I guess just to conclude, the evidence pertaining to what an appropriate market rent is for the property, well, the assessor's evidence isn't exactly representative of market. Mind you, of course, I acknowledge that it's a unique property, but that would conclude my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just before we move on, I'm just going to point out that you have assessed values on all these properties, which we are not giving any consideration to.
Oh, no, yeah, please don't give that any consideration. I've included those just because I just wanted to show that that's, a restaurant. So on page 25, I just have that property use code highlighted so we can see it's a restaurant. The assessed value, no weight on my end.
Right.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Ducharme, did you have any questions?
I guess I have no questions, but I guess I'll leave with somebody then.
Yeah,
Okay,
to the
have
end,
questions.
yes.
Okay.
Ms. Anderson, did you have any questions?
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
And I don't have any. Thank you.
I also have no questions. And does either party have a wish for a summation?
I guess I have a wish for summation based on the rebuttal. I would say in regards to his comments about 230, well, there's different addresses, anywhere from 221 Portage to 235 Portage, indicating that I don't indicate whether it's main floor or second floor space. I do. Comparables 10 through 14 are all second floor. I had mentioned in my brief. You can see they have unit numbers 221, right, 239, 225, etc. all indicate second floor. In general, in regards to his comment about restaurants, I would generally agree. Restaurants generally do indicate a high rent. However, this particular property with the finishes and the high end tenant that it attracts in terms of last being a laser eye clinic, the finishes and whatnot would be much more higher end than these comparables. And I think finally he mentioned not capable of achieving the rental rates asked. I would counter with their listing in 2022 where they're asking for 2250 per square foot. At the time they didn't achieve it, but that's a far cry from the blended rates of the model at exact number now. Let me get that. 875. Well, ours was 10. That's what he was. Yeah, that's what the applicant was requesting. Ours is 1050. And I'll finish it with that.
Thank you, Mr. Teacher. And Mr. Horsberg, did you have a wish for a summation?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a brief summation. So 234 Portage is quite a unique property, one of a kind. The property's own financial performance speaks volume as to the limited demand for it. The assessor has referenced an expired MLS listing. I think the most important thing to take from that MLS listing is the fact that it expired. If someone wanted to purchase that property, it would have sold. It's a very unique property. They've had a hard time attracting tenants. If it was capable of achieving that 2250 a square foot, it would be achieving it, but it's not. It's a unique property, and the rental rates, the rental rate that it's been assessed with, there isn't any market evidence to really support it when you start to look very deeply at those rental comparables. So I wish to thank the board for your time and consideration today, and thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rosberg.
Okay, so I will remove Mr. Forsberg.
Yes, thank you.
Have a good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good day.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Charlebois Page. Thank you for joining us. Affirm him.
Yes.
Mrs. Merland, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Applicant, would you please state your full name?
Stephen Charlebois Page.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
All right. Yes, so good afternoon, Mr. Charlebois Page. We are going to be looking at the last item on our docket, which is number 7, which is 235 Burroughs Avenue. We will begin with Mr. Ducharme, and whenever you are ready, Mr. Ducharme.
Thank you. The file number is 24-3648. The roll number is 140-301-65100. The address is 235 Burroughs Avenue. For the roll year 2025 with a reference date April 1st, 2023. We have an assessed value of 380,060 T and 217,010 T for a total of $597,000. The property description, it's a commercial mixed use property building. There's 2 buildings, 2 premises. Actual years 1901, 2002, effective years 1950, 2002. We have a leasable area on the other side of 3,418 square feet. Our recommendation is to confirm the assessed value of $597,000. On page 2. At the top, we have a parcel view of the subject property at the corner of Burroughs and Main Street. We can see it has exposure to Main Street. On the bottom is an overhead view of the subject property. On page 3, we have a Google Street view of the subject property. And at the bottom, a Google Street view showing the back of the subject property. The first floor is owner occupied. As a commercial business, the second floor being residential is rented. On page 4 are the rent comparables. 5 of the 10 comparables are on the same street as the subject. Comparables 1 through 7 are in the same region as the subject property and therefore in close proximity to the subject property. Comparable number 1 through number 4 are in the same neighborhood, the William White neighborhood, as the subject property, and in fact, only 1 block north of the subject property. Comparables 8 and number 9 are on the same parcel use, which is a commercial mixed use as the subject property. The mean of these comparables is $12.07 per square foot. The median is $12.12 per square foot, which is in support of the model rental rate at $10.08 per square foot. On page 5, we have our multi-family rent comparables. All comparables are in the same region, 3 as a subject property, and comparables 2, 3, and 6 are in the same neighborhood, the William White neighborhood, as subject property. The mean of these comparables is $677 per unit per month, with a median of $714 per unit per month. which I feel is in support of the model rent, which is at $609 per unit per month. And keeping in mind the actual rents per unit per month is $640 as per the 2022 mailer. On page 6, we have the apartment stream workup. We have 4 one-bedroom suites with a monthly rent per suite of $609.23, giving a potential gross income of $29,243. There's a 3.3% vacancy loss applied. Expenses are at 52.08%. We have a cap rate of 6.25%, giving an estimated value of $217,000 rounded. On page 7, we have the retail stream workup. We have 3,418 square feet at $10.08 per square foot, giving a potential rent of $34,453. We've applied a vacancy loss of 5%, expenses at 3%, a shortfall of $7 per square foot. We've applied a cap rate of 8.05%, giving a value of $380,000 rounded. On page 8 is a summary of both streams. We have a total value of $597,000, again, $217 for the apartment, plus $380 for the retail stream. On page 9 is our capitalization rates. For the commercial stream, the model has applied a cap rate of 8.05, which is above the 80th percentile for all market reports, and therefore we feel is fair. For the apartment stream, the model has applied a cap rate of 6.25, which again is above the 80th percentile for all market reports, and we feel is fair. Page 10, the Municipal Assessment Act excerpts. On page 11, this is the first page of the subject property 2022 mailer that was returned. It's the first page of the income and expense questionnaire. You'll note for the residential section, it's being completed, as the commercial section of this is owner occupied. Page 12 is just page 2 of the income and expense report, signed off by the owner. Page 13, we have page 1 of the tenant verification form, which is not filled in as it's occupied. And page 14 is page 2 of the tenant verification form. Page 15 is a copy of the multifamily questionnaire that was returned. You'll note that the reported gross potential rents reported is $30,720, which is slightly more than the model at $29,243. That would conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tisha. Mr. Charlebois Page, do you have any questions to the assessor?
I do. Thank you, Mrs. Chair. So first, I'll just confirm with you again that today's value presented is model generated.
Yes.
Thank you. Are you aware, I mean, I know you touched that the ground floor is a commercial business. Are you aware of the business that's operated on the ground floor?
Yes, it's say, I think got blankets, just a minute. You know, it's a massage. I believe it's a men's like has saunas and whirlpools, and I'm not sure what you call it.
Yeah. So if I can just give you what my research, an adult entertainment service or alternative lifestyle adult club are the two terms I have there. Were you aware that that was the business operating on the ground floor?
The way you describe is maybe a little different than what I thought. I
But,
thought it was like a masseuse, like a massage place to get massages and you know, use hot tubs or saunas and whatnot. They have it.
To my understanding, this is an adult club, predominantly for alternative lifestyles. So we can move on from that. And so now knowing that, do you think that type of tenancy might affect marketability, especially on the second floor, the multifamily is?
Yeah, I would say that that might be fair, yeah.
So I think you said you were aware of the steam showers, hot tubs, that kind of those sort of installed on the ground floor there. So sorry, can I just confirm that I think you said you're aware that there was the hot tub and the open shower area, is that correct?
Yeah, my understanding was it's like a services for the basically relaxation of it.
Okay, so do you think that given the age and the wood frame construction that predominantly water and steam sort of outfit on the ground floor may affect I guess building economic age life?
Suppose it could, yes, yes.
Do you think that this type of property, given the tenancy, given the age, given the construction, belongs at the bottom end of the valuation range when it comes to talking about retail?
In terms of, yeah, retail, in terms of, for example, restaurants or.
Sure.
Yeah, a little.
From a tenancy standpoint, I guess, so you're talking about on a tenancy standpoint, so maybe we'll just break that down. From a tenancy standpoint, if we were to say, like I know noted that you had mentioned on the previous call, let's say like a restaurant or bank or one of those premier types of tenants, given what we know about the subject property, you wouldn't categorize this in the top end of the range. Is that a fair statement?
I don't know if I could say, I mean, without looking at I've seen pictures of the interior, parts of the interior, it looks quite nice.
I have as well. I actually found the interior lower quality finish, especially some of the areas around the floor where the floor meets the wall, but we can move on from that. I guess you had mentioned the income. So I guess on page 11 of your brief, you have the income and expense statement from 2022. And again, the residential portion is the only relevant data as the ground floor is owner occupied. I did note an income there for fiscal year 22. It was 27,057. Sort of just agree that that's lower than the current assessed value to the residential portion.
Well, that might have been accounted for some vacancy during the year for the residential portion. I'm not sure, but we're talking about the gross potential income.
Sure, but then I think the EGI would be lower than the reported. Is that not a fair statement?
Sorry?
The effective gross income would be lower?
The income that was reported would be lower, yes, if we look at page 11, yes.
Okay.
But again, that doesn't talk to the potential.
Okay, yep. And now just quickly on your cap rates study on page 9, you gave commentary on sort of the two income streams. You said retail here, you're outside of the 80th percentile. I tend to agree with with what you've said there, but when you look at the retail section here, you would think that potentially the only closest asset from those broad categories would be strip. Is that a fair statement?
We would consider regional. In either event, it's well above any of these.
Sorry,
and I actually believe we're asking for lower than.
Could I actually just confirm with you there?
Sorry,
it's my understanding that a regional shopping center would be a premier retail asset, and the retail strip would represent your older neighborhood strips, unanchored. You maybe just my understanding as regional shopping center would be a flagship asset or a large anchored asset. Is that not a fair statement?
This is not in relation to shopping centers. In either case, again, the cap rate is well above all of these.
Sure, and I guess that's what I'm getting at here is, do you think CMUs, mixed use commercial assets with other types of income streams would it be considered in these three categories for a retail cap rate analysis?
No, we don't have a specific one. There's just so few of these properties. We don't have several.
Yeah, I'm not going to dispute that. I agree. In my own research, there's not enough certainty to stratify a cap rate from those properties specifically. So I'm assuming what the model's done and what I've done is look sort of at what the range is of retail, and then stratified that data and said this property belongs at the top end of the range. Do you think that's a fair statement because it's an inferior asset?
What was the question?
So I'm wondering if, in your opinion, the model looked at this range provided, and it set it up at an 8 cap. Do you think that's the model pushing it up because it's deeming it an inferior asset in comparison to this market data?
I would say in general, that's a fair statement. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Anderson, any questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, parking spaces are in the rear of the building.
Didn't count. There didn't seem to be, appear to be many. I do have a picture here. There you can see there is Peachtree. There is a bit of parking on the side of the street, and it looks like there'd be few, if any, at the back there. I don't know, maybe for employees only.
And the apartments on the second floor, are they rented out on a yearly basis?
Yeah, it's on a yearly, the leases, I'm not sure what. If it's, my understanding it would be year to year, but I don't know for sure if it's year to year, potentially could be different.
And your cap rate, is that blended between income stream 1 and 2?
No, so just to be clear, for the cap rates.
I'm just looking at your summary, it looks like it could be a blend between the two.
Oh, it figures, on the summary on the page, I guess there's some kind of model calculation that blends them, but, we have separate, ones for the retail and apartments.
Okay. No further questions. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So this was model driven, correct?
Yes,
So the model came up with the 8.05 cap rate on the retail portion.
yes. Which does seem high, but.
So I'm just trying to figure out what the model was using, like what information would be triggering the model to give that type of cap rate.
Well, I think the applicant kind of touched on it a bit, the building age, I don't know, it's been maintained, not necessarily improved, so I can speak specifically maybe to what, the modelers specifically look at. I
Okay,
do recognize it's higher than what we would normally expect maybe for retail.
so yes, because I do understand that, it has an actual age, I guess, of 1901, but an effective age between 1950 and 2002. So that's where I'm slightly confused on this, but and you didn't inspect the property,
No, I was.
but you had interior pictures?
No, like what I was referring to was like online, like going to the website, and looking at the property through their website.
But you didn't include them.
No, I didn't think to include them, no.
All right. Is there a basement to this property?
It's not like that basement to the property, no. I don't believe we we have a record of the lease.
Okay, so is it a slab to the best of your knowledge?
It could be, I don't know. Understanding the initial build, it would very likely be.
This is in the William White neighborhood, correct?
Yes,
And the apartments are 4 1-bedroom.
yes.
So would you say that is slightly inferior, considering they're all 1-bedrooms? Get more rent.
Inferior,
Oh, I'm sorry,
in general, me?
get more rent with the 2-bedroom, correct?
Yeah, you would, again, I think our model is consistent with the actual that's being achieved through the.
Okay.
Through the rentals.
And you didn't include any pictures of the what the apartment suite would look like?
No, I did not expect. So yeah, that's we have no records of any, I think, interior pictures of the apartments.
So you didn't see any interior pictures on the website, so you can't speak to
Not
what the
the-
amenities would be?
No, not for the apartments.
Thank you, Mr. Ducharme. I believe that's all my questions. If you would like to proceed, Mr. Sharma on page with your brief.
Thank you, Mr. So we have a single-story mixed-use building that was built originally in 1901. The site area is 4,374 square feet with a leasable area of 3,418 square feet. The property contains 4 multifamily units on the second floor. The exterior of the building I would describe as unique. I included a picture of it there on page 6 of my brief, and an updated, I guess, paint job on page 7 of my brief. So the subject property on the ground floor is currently occupied by Adonis Men's Spa Inc. It operates, as they mentioned in questioning, as an adult entertainment service or alternative lifestyle adult club. The current assessment is $597,000, split into 2 classes, $380 in commercial, $217 in residential. I am going to note something up front, if just as a cursory before I get into my evaluation. It appears the time where I pulled the city valuation document. So if you go to page 21, you can note the discrepancy with me. I did. This might be a fault on my end of when I procured this document. I know the valuation department had split times on when the apartment and the retail was done. The disclosure document for the valuation that I had differs from the final city value. So if you look on page 21 there, you'll sort of see what I had time of valuation. And I just want to note that because it'll be different from what Mr. Ducharme presented on. So just for instance, the retail cap rate at 9.05% is one. The multifamily cap rate and I think overall expense allowance percentage varies. I just wanted to put that to the board's attention and Mr. Assessor's attention before I went into my presentation. So I have set aside the cost approach and the sales comparison approach, focused in on the income approach, as I believe that's how this property would transact. So I'll start, direct everyone's attention to page 12 of my report. And this is some basic information, but I've taken used a 29,706 stabilized effective gross income, and applied a 63.8% expense ratio to the property. If you'll follow me to the next page, I took a look at the capitalization rate for the property, included a study, stratified the property based on age, based on what the property is, how it's built out, and I applied a 575, which is sort of in line there with the effective year built applied by the assessment authority. So my income value is actually, or sorry, my income value for the multifamily is on page 15. And I obviously note that I've applied a higher than typical expense to the subject property. I don't think that's atypical given the year built, given the, I guess, construction type of the property. And yeah, so I don't think that's necessarily outside of the realm of the high end of expenses for the property. So I've applied a 63.8, like I said, percent of PGI. Obviously, the reported expenses for the subject property are quite high in both the utilities and the repair and maintenance column. Those have both been stabilized, and figures used there are reduced to be more in line with market at the high end of the range. So again, my proposed revised value for that asset class there is 186,000 rounded downward. For the multifamily portion, I'll now direct the board to my retail portion, which my workup is on page 16. So that's a summary of my valuation. If you'll go to the next page at 17, I've provided comparables from the bottom end of the retail range. It's my position that given the tenancy type, given the age of the building, given the visual of the exterior, given the business that's being run in there in terms of lots of water, lots of steam, that sort of additional wear and tear on the property, I have this property at the bottom end of the range. I expanded my vicinity a little more than the assessor, but inferior locations, retail outfits that I wouldn't consider to be in high quality assets. Best comparison for the subject property, and I've come up with a median of 775 and an average of 815. And I've applied an $8 in my reconciliation value. My other inputs were in line with the original city income value, but in addition to that, I've provided a retail capitalization rate study, and you'll note that our range at Altus for a retail low quality capitalization rate range from 7.5% to 8.5% and upward. Reasons that this property could be adjusted upward. I noted, Madam Chair, you asked Mr. Assessor about that. I mean, age, tenancy type, risk profile for the property, location, and wood frame construction, very old building predominantly. So to me, I've applied a 9. Could it be an 8.5% to a 9%? Sure. Regardless of where it falls within that range, to me, it would be near the top of the capitalization rate range or a bottom of the quality range, if that's more clear. So again, you'll see at the bottom of page 16, my proposed revised value for the subject property is 261,000 rounded down for the retail portion. And then if you'll follow me down to the bottom of page 17, you'll see my proposed revised assessment totaling 447,000 for both income streams. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Duchamp, questions?
I do have some questions. Thank you, Madam Chair. On page 13 of your report, just to be clear, this is for the multifamily income stream you have. You're saying, or in your documentation here, it says we're disputing the assessor's capital rate of 5.3% and that you're using a capital rate of 6.25. just to be clear, we are as well, City of Winnipeg using a 6.25% cap rate for multifamily, correct?
Mr. Chair, that'd be, or sorry, Mr. Assessor, that's a clerical. In my reconciliation of value, I'm using a 575. I just noting the discrepancy between the two. So I apologize for that. Noting the discrepancy.
That's fair.
I've used a 575 in my reconciliation value.
Okay, thank you. Going to page 17, your comparables for the retail.
Yep.
In regards to, I guess you have indexes. In regards to indexes 1, 2, 3, and 4, would you agree that the leasable areas ranging from 7,517 square feet to 39,639 square feet would be significantly larger than the subject property, which is 3,418 square feet?
Yeah. So I noted in your brief as well, you had tenancy type or your tenancies were less than half the size of the subject property. And you'll see in my comps 5 to 7, I had the same issue. There wasn't a perfect inferior retail comp in the immediate vicinity. But what gave me confidence in my figure was sort of stratifying. If you look there at 359 Johnson West, there 5 to 7, they're 1,200 and 1,440 square feet. And then, correct, you are right there that the property there at 399 McPhillips has the two tenancies, 775 and 950. They are bigger, though certainly are bigger, and there's no dispute. And the reason for including the larger tenancy there at in the same market area was it was a gym. But I will agree that that's not the best comparison for the subject property. So I might weight more heavily on 1, 2, 5, 6, and 7.
Would you agree that larger leased areas in general command a lower rent due to, say, economies of scale?
Typically, yes.
And I wouldn't necessarily expect you to know this, but according to our records, all your comparables except number 4, we consider as industrial properties. Would you agree that in general industrial properties command a lower rent than commercial properties?
Yeah. So I'd be careful with that statement, as I know that the assets range. You have premier new built stuff in the industrial grade that would supersede inferior assets. But if you're saying as a general rule, I would agree with that principle. Obviously, it wouldn't be a perfect rule, if that makes sense. Not all industrial rents would be under retail rents. But yes, as a rule, I would agree.
Thank you. In regards to index 1 and 2, those are located next to a major railway yard. Would you agree that being located next to a major railway yard would negatively affect the rent that a building could command?
Yeah, these were chosen to be inferior properties with inferior retail tenancies. I'd also note that perhaps there's an error in the city system with respect to these properties. If you just from a street view perspective, these are retail tenancies. So when we're comparing a market rent for property like the subject property, we'd be, in my opinion, I chose to look at inferior retail tenancies. Whether the city has it graded for assessment as industrial, I mean, one of the tenancies is a bowling alley next to, a restaurant with. So again, I just want to make clear that the city might stratify for assessment those buildings as industrial, but the tenancies within them are retail.
That would be my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Martins
No questions. We understand. Asked and answered. Thank you.
and Ms. Anderson.
I have no questions either, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to assume you did not inspect this property, Mr. Charles.
I conducted a exterior drive-by, but nothing interior. I'm sure.
All right, thank you. So then I'm going to say the statement that you made on the building being I think you actually said wear and tear, but because of the steam and water, that's sort of a supposition on your part.
Yeah, it would be. I mean, there are pictures of this business available. I chose not to include them. Some maybe include some things of more adult nature, but yeah, no, I wouldn't have any evidence of water damage or anything like that, Madam Chair. So I just to make that clear, I wouldn't. That's more of a supposition based on, you know, a higher R&M on the multifamily portions above, a wood frame structure from 1901 with something running in the ground floor that's, you know, got a lot of water moving through it. That is a supposition plan. So that's where that came from.
Yes, I understand. So you didn't see anything when you were looking at these interior pictures that, you know, mold
No.
on the wall or anything of that nature?
No, I did not see water running down the wall. I did note, like I said earlier, sort of where the walls would meet the floor. Let's just say it wouldn't be what I would consider to be a high-end like segue between those two parts, and it's an older building, so that's nothing to be unexpected.
Right, okay. Okay. Also, your comps on page 17 that you were referencing with the assessor.
Yes.
Are any of those in the William White neighborhood?
Madam Chair, I couldn't speak to the neighborhood specifically, but so comps 1, 2, 5, 6, and 7 are just under 3 kilometers from the subject property, all north of the tracks. And as Mr. Assessor noted, I believe he noted the one was on McPhillips there. It's, you know, got street facing on McPhillips, but it is affected by the railway. With that specific neighborhood in mind, no, but within the same area for comparison, given, and I did note this already, that I expanded my immediate vicinity search to include inferior retail tenants, where the assessor analysis is more stratified in the immediate vicinity, but to superior retail properties.
All right. And do you know what business, I think you said your comps, or you were waiting more on comps 1, 2, 5, 6, and 7, correct?
Thanks, Madam Chair.
Sorry, are you agreeing or not agreeing?
Oh, I'm sorry. Could you repeat that? I apologize.
Yes, no problem.
Yes, I am. If your question was, am I weighting it more on 1, 2, 5, 6, and 7? Yes. And I just add to that notion, as Mr. Assessor pointed out, I've got some bigger tenancies in there. I've got some smaller tenancies in there. I wasn't able to find that perfect match. I would agree that, I would say that the assessment authority had an issue as well. I noted a bunch of the comparables included from the assessment authority were less than half the size of the subject property there in the mid 3,000 square footage. And yeah, I went to these properties that had inferior, in my opinion, inferior retail tenancies to try and compare to the subject property.
Okay, sorry, do you know what is taking place in 1, 2, 5, 6, and 7 comps?
Without specific reference to the units due to privacy concerns, these are typical, I guess, mixed office and retail ground floor in strips, you know, not in prime locations, none of them including the subject property. And you would have a mix of wide variety of businesses. Maybe none with a stigma or considerations for external factors like the subject property would have, that's for sure.
Okay. Do you know if any of these comps have basements?
No, I do not. But I will note the board had a question. I do want to clarify this. If you go to page 20 of my brief, the assessment authority does have an 800 square foot basement area noted on building 1. And a 600 square foot base, or sorry, that's the main area. The only basement area I saw was the 817 square foot on building 1, section 2 there, if you see on page 20, right in the middle. One thing that gives me pause is the age of the building and the height included on that. In my experience, it's atypical for a basement to have a wall height of that nature in an old building like this. So I would maybe hesitate on that figure, but probably hasn't been inspected in a long time, and I don't think it would achieve a rent, outside of what's been included in the main area.
Right, yeah, I know, I am asking just about the basement in terms of if it's a slab or not.
Oh yeah, so from that it would appear not, although again a bit odd given the age of this property that there'd be a 11-foot basement. So.
Right. Sorry, so the comps, you don't know if they have basements or not, correct? Sorry.
No, and the rents included there are from the main floor. If you see there, it was a column 2, 3, 4, 5. So that'd be the prime main floor space for those tenancies. And no, to my knowledge, or sorry, I shouldn't speculate whether they include basement or forward.
All right. And also your comps in terms of their age. I'm going to assume would be in better shape given their effective age.
I think they would, Madam Chair, but this inventory was best in proximity to represent the bottom end of the retail spectrum for rents, and that's where I had the subject property in the grand scheme of the valuation.
All right. I thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you.
Does either party have a wish for a summation on this property?
I don't believe I do, thank you.
I'll take a brief summation. I'll keep to the point. I just, from my perspective, given the tenancy type and given the business conducted there, I think from a perspective of the retail assets and the broad spectrum of the city of Winnipeg, that this belongs at the bottom end of the quality class. Around the retail business rent should be reduced, and I just think that I would ask the board to consider the age, the location, and the construction of this property in relation to the age. And I would ask the board to bring it in line with the bottom end of the rental range as requested in my analysis. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have heard both items on our docket today. And this hearing is now adjourned. And Mr. Charlebois, thank you very much for appearing this afternoon and giving us your presentation.
Thank you everyone for participating, and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, you too.
Also.
Good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
And thank you very much, Mr. Ducharme, for his briefs.
All right, Madam Chair, I'll take us offline.
You want to have a nice rest of the day?
You too,
too.
thank you.
Nice weather. Warm weather, I guess. Oh, wow.